What if the most powerful families in America were not destroyed by scandal, war, or market collapse, but by three women who were never supposed to ask a single question? The dinner is already over. Three women sit perfectly still in a Manhattan parlor while, 2 blocks away, a man who once controlled the largest shipping fleet on the eastern seaboard signs documents that will erase his family's name from every financial register in New York City. He does not know they are the reason. Elowen Vanrath sets down her tea. Her jaw is tight. Her eyes move to her sister Sabine, who is already closing a leather notebook with the quiet efficiency of someone who has done what she came to do. Across from them both, Ivara stares at the window. She is the youngest. She looks the calmest. She is the most dangerous. Nobody sent them. Nobody hired them. Nobody even knew to watch them. That is precisely how they planned it. 6 elite families, gone within a decade. No public scandal. No courtroom drama. No names in any newspaper. Just 3 sisters from a Fifth Avenue household that was supposed to produce well-married daughters and polite conversation. Instead, it produced something nobody saw coming. Hi viewers, before we go any further, I need to ask you something personal. If you discovered that the most powerful people around you had built everything on a lie, would you expose it? Or protect yourself? Drop your answer in the comments right now. And if this story already has you hooked, subscribe and hit that like button so more people get to hear what really happened. The question every historian avoided asking was not what happened to those families. It was how 3 women, raised to smile and stay silent, learned to move through the most protected rooms in America and walk out with everything that mattered. Nobody burned anything down. They just stopped agreeing that the fire wasn't already burning. And the most terrifying part, the fire had been burning for years. They were simply the first ones willing to say it out loud. Cornelius Vanrath does not look at his daughters when he speaks about money. He looks at the wall, at the fireplace, at his hands, anywhere that is not the 3 young faces arranged across the dining table from him. Faces that are listening far more carefully than he realizes. It is 1889. Elowen is 18. Sabine is 14. Ivara has just turned 12. The Vanrath townhouse on Fifth Avenue smells of beeswax and coal smoke, and the particular kind of silence that only exists in houses where everything important goes unsaid. Their father controls one of the most profitable shipping and logistics operations on the Atlantic seaboard. The cargo his fleet moves annually is worth, in today's money, close to $400 million. He is not simply wealthy. He is structurally important, the kind of man whose continued existence stabilizes the financial plans of a dozen other powerful men. And yet, he sits at the head of his own table, like a man who is waiting for something to go wrong. Elowen watches him. She has been watching him since she was old enough to understand that the way a man holds a conversation tells you more than the words he chooses. Cornelius speaks about business in generalities. He deflects specifics. When a name comes up that unsettles him, his left hand moves to his collar, just slightly, just once. And then he changes the subject. She files it away. Sabine, 4 seats down, is doing something different. She is eating slowly and staring at the linen tablecloth like it contains a calculation she hasn't finished yet. She heard something this afternoon. A fragment of conversation between her father and his business attorney, voices low behind a half-closed study door. Something about projected income, about forward commitments, about what would happen if 3 particular families called in their agreements at the same time. She didn't understand all of it. She understood enough. Ivara, the youngest, says nothing. She passes the bread. She smiles when smiled at. She asks her father, very politely, whether she may borrow one of the financial journals from his study. She is curious about the railroads. Cornelius looks at her for a long moment. He says yes. He will spend years wondering why he said yes. 3 daughters. 3 different ways of seeing. 3 different ways of moving through a world that had already decided exactly what they were for. None of them had decided yet, but they were getting close. The invitation arrives on cream-colored paper with a wax seal. The woman who receives it turns it over twice, reads the name at the bottom, and sets it on the edge of her dressing table without opening it fully. Her maid watches from the doorway. Neither of them speaks, because both of them understand, without saying it, that an invitation from Elowen Vanrath is not really an invitation. It is a placement. By 1891, the unspoken rules of New York's gilded upper tier have calcified into something almost architectural. You could not see them, could not touch them, but walk into the wrong room with the wrong person, and you would feel them the same way you feel a wall in total darkness. Hard, immediate, final. Marriage was not love. Marriage was a capital transfer wrapped in ceremony. A daughter placed in the right household moved money between families more efficiently than any bank. Everybody knew this. Nobody said it. Wealth was not what you held. It was what people believed you held. A family carrying 20 years of deferred debt could still command a room, still broker deals, still terrify competitors, provided the right people kept treating them as though the debt did not exist. The moment those people stopped, what? The debt became real. Overnight. Completely. And reputation was not a reflection of the truth. Reputation was the truth. This is the system the Vanrath sisters were born into, not a system of laws, a system of agreements, maintained by silence, enforced by exclusion, and built from the foundation up, on the single most fragile material in human civilization, collective belief. The strongest families in America weren't the richest. They were simply the best at making everyone agree not to look too closely. Senator Hartwell laughs too loudly at something he does not find funny. Elowen hears it from across the room and does not turn around. She does not need to. She already knows what caused it. The same thing that always causes powerful men to perform comfort they do not feel. Someone at her table has said something that hit too close. She keeps her back straight, keeps her expression even, lifts her wine glass and takes exactly one sip. It is the spring of 1892. The Wednesday dinner is her third. 14 guests. 11 of them control, in some form, the financial infrastructure of the northeastern United States. None of them know they were seated in this particular arrangement by design. Hartwell is beside Margaret Aldrich, whose husband controls the New England credit lines that Hartwell's next campaign has quietly borrowed against. They have never been formally introduced. They are now on their second glass of Bordeaux, laughing together like old friends, and Hartwell is already calculating what this new connection is worth to him. He is so focused on what he might gain from Margaret Aldrich that he does not notice what he is telling her. Elowen notices, 3 tables down, Thomas Vane, shipping magnate, competitor of the Vanrath family's Atlantic routes, is speaking animatedly to a young widow named Clara Josephine Reeves. Vane does not know that Clara Josephine's late husband left her the controlling interest in a freight brokerage that sits directly between 2 of Vane's most profitable contracts. Vane thinks he is being charming. He is being recorded. Not literally. In Elowen's memory, which is the most reliable filing system in the state of New York. By the time the dessert course arrives, 3 alliances have shifted. Nobody noticed. That is the entire point. Elowen moves through the room the way water moves through rock. Not by force, but by patience. By finding the exact place where pressure can be applied without ever appearing to push. She remembers the slight hesitation before a man answers a simple question. She remembers a wife's expression when a particular name is mentioned. She remembers who drinks too much, who laughs too fast, who touches their collar when the conversation turns to financing. She is 21 years old. She has been doing this since she was 16. By the following Wednesday, 2 of the evening's attendees will make decisions that redirect significant capital. Decisions they will each believe they arrived at independently. They did not arrive at them independently, and the woman who guided them there was already planning the next dinner, because Elowen had just realized that her sister Sabine had found something in the ledgers that changed everything. The number is wrong. Sabine sees it on a Tuesday afternoon in October 1893, in the third column of a quarterly report left open on her father's desk while he steps out to receive a visitor. She is not supposed to be in the study. She is supposed to be in the drawing room, learning to embroider. She reads the column twice, then a third time. Then she sits down in her father's chair, slowly, the way a person sits when their legs have stopped working properly, and reads the entire report from the first page. The Aldrich family is listed as a primary creditor in a Van Rath-linked freight agreement. Their stated assets back the arrangement with what the document describes as established and verified liquidity. Sabine knows what liquidity means. She has been reading financial documents since she was 14, quietly, systematically, the way other girls read letters from boys they cannot stop thinking about. The Aldrich family does not have liquidity. What they have is projected income, returns on investments that will not mature for 19 years, used today as though they already exist. Their wealth is real in the same way a promise is real, conditional, dependent on nothing going wrong. Sabine closes the report, opens it again, closes it. She goes to her room and retrieves the small leather notebook she has kept since 1891, the one where she records, in a private shorthand nobody else can read, the discrepancies she has noticed across 3 years of quiet observation. She adds 3 new entries. Then she turns back 4 pages and realizes that 2 of the families she has already documented are connected to the Aldrich arrangements. The problem is not one family. The problem is a chain. She spends the next 6 weeks requesting documents, politely, indirectly, through a network of small favors and borrowed access. And what she assembles is not a scandal. It is a map of the distance between what New York's most powerful families claim to own and what, at any given moment, they could actually produce. The gap is catastrophic. She tells no one. Not yet. Because Sabine Van Rath understands something her sisters are still learning. Information without timing is just noise, but in the wrong hands, at the right moment. It was the most powerful weapon in the world, and someone had just noticed that Sabine was holding it. The bank letter arrives on a Wednesday morning, and Ivara reads it standing up. She does not sit down. She does not call for anyone. She stands in the hallway of the Van Rath townhouse, still wearing her coat from the morning walk, and reads the single paragraph that informs her that the First National lending arrangement supporting her textile partnership in Providence has been placed under routine institutional review, effective immediately. She folds the letter, puts it in her coat pocket, goes upstairs. By noon, she has written 4 responses, visited 2 offices, and confirmed what she already suspected the moment she read the word routine. There is nothing routine about it. The timing is too clean. The language is too careful. 3 separate lenders, 3 separate cities, 3 letters arriving within the same 5-day window. This is not a coincidence. This is a signal. Ivara Van Rath is 17 years old and she has just been told, in the politest possible language, that the system has noticed her. What she built over the previous 14 months was not complicated. It was just honest. She found textile operations that were profitable, but starved of investment because the men who controlled New York capital had no interest in backing anything that didn't first pass through their network. She restructured the ownership in a way that let workers hold partial stakes. She brought in investors from outside the established circuit, merchants, tradespeople, a collective of freedmen's savings associations from Philadelphia whose financial discipline was sharper than any Fifth Avenue firm she had encountered. The returns were real. The model worked. And that was exactly the problem. Because a model that works without the gatekeepers doesn't just compete with the system. It demonstrates that the system is optional, that the alliances, the introductions, the carefully managed social debt, none of it is actually necessary to produce value. It is only necessary to protect those who already have it. Ivara sits at her writing desk and opens her notebook to a fresh page. She does not write about the letters. She writes a question. What does the system do when it cannot buy you, cannot discredit you, and cannot ignore you? She stares at it for a long moment. Then she writes the answer underneath. It removes the ground beneath your feet. She closes the notebook, looks out the window at the street below, the carriages, the vendors, the ordinary motion of a city that has no idea what is happening inside this room. And for the first time since she started, Ivara Vanrath felt something she did not have a name for yet. It sat in her chest like a stone, cold, heavy, certain. Nobody calls a meeting. That is the first thing to understand about what happens next. There is no room yum where powerful men sit around a table and decide to destroy the Vanrath sisters. There is no vote, no formal agreement, no document that will ever surface in any archive. There is simply a Tuesday afternoon in the spring of 1895 when Cornelius Vanrath's oldest banking relationship declines to renew a standard credit arrangement, and the officer who delivers the news cannot quite meet his eyes. That is all. That is how it begins. Within 60 days, 2 more arrangements follow. Not cancelled, not contested, simply allowed to expire without the customary renewal conversation. Men who have known Cornelius Vanrath for 20 years begin responding to correspondence 2 weeks later than usual, then 3 weeks, then not at all. Eloin watches the guest list for the Wednesday dinner and sees, for the first time, a pattern she cannot reverse. The names she needs are no longer declining, they are simply not responding. And in this world, silence is not neutrality. Silence is a verdict. Sabine pulls the Vanrath family accounts and lays them beside the ledgers she has been keeping for 3 years. She does not panic. She calculates. What she sees is a slow, precise withdrawal, not of money, but of access, of the invisible credit that makes money move. The Vanrath family's finances are technically sound. But sound finances mean nothing when the people who control the channels have quietly agreed to reroute around you. Ivara sends a final letter to her Philadelphia partners. She tells them the truth in 2 sentences. They write back within the week, and their response is generous and clear. But generosity from outside the system cannot replace infrastructure inside it. Power was never about money. They understand that now, all 3 of them, in their separate rooms, arriving at the same conclusion through 3 completely different routes. Power is an agreement, and someone had just circulated a memo that rewrote the terms. No signatures, no confrontation, just the quiet, coordinated withdrawal of belief, and the Vanrath name was already disappearing from rooms it used to own. The last Wednesday dinner has 11 guests. Eloin counts them from the doorway before she enters. 11. There were 42 at the peak. She straightens her back, fixes her expression into something that communicates nothing, and walks into the room. She stays 2 hours. She is brilliant. She is warm. She steers 3 conversations with the same precision she has always used, and 2 of the guests leave genuinely believing the evening was extraordinary. It changes nothing. She walks upstairs afterward and sits on the edge of her bed in the dark for a long time, not crying. Eloin Vanrath does not cry about things she cannot reverse. She is thinking, running the architecture of the last 18 months through her mind like an engineer reviewing a collapsed structure, looking for the exact point where the weight shifted. The exact moment the ground changed beneath her without her feeling it move. She cannot find a single moment, because there wasn't one. That is what breaks her. Not a betrayal she can name, but 100 quiet decisions made by 100 different people who never once had to coordinate, because the system they were protecting was so deeply understood that protecting it required no discussion at all. Sabine, 3 rooms away, is doing something different. She is removing the ledgers from behind the false panel and reading them from the beginning, not looking for what went wrong, looking for what she missed. By the 4th volume, she finds it, not a gap in the data, but a gap in her assumption. She had documented the fragility of other families. She had never once applied the same analysis to her own. The Vanrath family's exposure is not catastrophic. It is worse than catastrophic. It is survivable, which means the damage will be slow, and they will have to live inside it for years. Ivara's Providence operation formally closes on a Tuesday in November. She receives the notification by messenger and tips him generously. She does not read the paperwork until the following morning. She signs what needs to be signed, returns what needs to be returned, and then sits for a moment in the empty office of what was, 14 months ago, the most promising alternative financial model in the northeastern United States. Then she stands up. Because Ivara Vanrath has never once confused losing a round with losing the fight. The three sisters had lost everything the system could take. What none of them realized yet was what the system had left behind, and how much more dangerous they were now that they had nothing left to protect. Elowen stops hosting dinners in January of 1896. Not because she is told to, not because she runs out of guests. She stops because one evening, midway through a conversation with a man who once brokered railroad deals at her table, she realizes he is speaking to her the way people speak to someone who used to matter, past tense dressed in present courtesy. She excuses herself, goes to the powder room, looks at her own face in the mirror for a moment that stretches too long. Then she goes back to the table and finishes the conversation with the same precision she has always used, because Elowen Vanrath will not give anyone in this city the satisfaction of watching her flinch. But she never sends another invitation. The isolation is unlike anything she was prepared for. Not because it is loud, it is profoundly quiet. The city does not turn on her. It simply turns away. And in the turning, she discovers something that the system never taught her. That a woman who was trained to derive her entire sense of purpose from the movement of influence has no vocabulary for stillness, no framework for a morning where nothing is being built. She learns one anyway, slowly, painfully, the way you learn any language you were never supposed to need. Sabine retreats into numbers that cannot be taken from her. Pure mathematics, correspondence. The unsigned essays that will eventually circulate in journals under initials no one connects to a Fifth Avenue family. She is precise, she is brilliant, and she is entirely invisible, which is, she decides, a different kind of power. Smaller, quieter, but hers. Ivara leaves New York in the spring of 1897 with 2 trunks, a leather notebook, and no forwarding address given to anyone in the social register. She is 20 years old. She goes to Ohio. She starts again. What all 3 of them carry, the thing the system could not confiscate, is the knowledge of exactly how it works. The pressure points, the hidden debts, the agreements propping up reputations that have no foundation. They were punished for knowing too much, too early. History, which would spend the next 30 years proving them right on every single point, would do so without ever once spelling out their names. The Aldrich concern collapses in the spring of 1908. It is not quiet. The newspapers cover it for 6 consecutive days. The defaulted arrangements, the deferred debts that had been carrying the family's reputation for over 2 decades. The investors who trusted documents that described wealth that had, in truth, existed only on paper since 1891. Nobody mentions a leather notebook kept behind a false panel in a Fifth Avenue writing desk. The vain shipping empire dissolves across 8 years of asset sales, quietly, piece by piece, between 1904 and 1912. The textile model that Ivara built in Providence, the one that was dismantled by coordinated institutional withdrawal in 1895, is replicated, celebrated, and written into business school curricula by 1920. The financial transparency that Sabine spent a decade documenting in secret becomes a federal regulatory requirement within a generation. The system did not survive. It lasted exactly as long as enough people agreed to believe in it. 3 women saw that first. 3 women paid the price for seeing it first. And the world, moving at its own pace, arrived at the same conclusion 30 years later, and called it progress. They were not reckless. They were not wrong. They were simply the first. And the most honest thing history can say about what was done to the Vanrath sisters is this: the system was not strong. It was only ever agreed upon. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the systems you move through every single day, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this one. These are the histories that don't make the textbooks, the ones that got buried so the wrong people could stay comfortable. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, Drop your thoughts in the comments below and help inspire someone else who might be sitting exactly where the Van Rath sisters once sat, seeing the truth clearly and wondering if it's worth the cost. It always is.